Hey, it's Michael here from Arc Smarter. Hope you're doing well. How's everybody doing? It's a gray day here where I am in Connecticut. Hopefully it is sunny where you are. Um, Although it is warmer, a lot of the snow is finally disappearing, which is nice. I'm going to go ahead and get started and just wanted to say thank you for joining me here on Cooking with Dynamo. It's not a real cooking show, although that would be kind of fun and interesting. What we're going to do though is go through some what I call recipes for typical kind of Dynamo situations. And let me pull up my friendly mind map. And what we're going to talk about is this idea that Dynamo is kind of like a dinner party. And I'll get into that and explain that a little bit more. I'll also talk about how I came up with this analogy, and one that I think is actually pretty apt. And then we're going to dive into what I call the 7 essential recipes. Now, these aren't going to be full-on scripts, but they are significant portions of scripts that you can use to assemble scripts of your own. So I like, again, that analogy of the recipe because you can use it, you can modify it. It will get you starting in creating your own kind of Dynamo dinner party. And then time permitting, I have some examples that we're going to look at how you can start to assemble these and put them together. And then at the very end, if you want some more Dynamo, I'm going to give you some free resources, some paid resources, and you can take it from there. So hopefully we'll be able to fit this all in an hour. We should be able to. So I'm just going to dive right in right now and go ahead and get started. So I said before, we're cooking with Dynamo, and Dynamo is like a dinner party. So one of the essentials of Dynamo, and we're going to switch over to Dynamo real soon, is the node. And that essentially we are working with a graphical programming interface. We are connecting nodes rather than writing code. And these nodes all do things. They have very specific jobs. So there are a lot of nodes, and we can connect them and do all sorts of things. But if you think of them that the node is the ingredient, we can group those nodes together to create these kind of prepared dishes, right? So we have a specific group of nodes that does a specific thing, and then we've grouped them together. And we have another group of nodes that is doing another thing. So we think of those again like the dishes. So we put all those dishes together. Stay with me here, and then you get the meal. So we're doing a 7-course meal or a 10-course meal. And then you as the script creator, you're the host of the meal, and you're also the chef. So you're assembling these various ingredients into dishes. You're putting those dishes together to create the meal. And your Dynamo script, again, is that meal. So the tricky part is, though, is that there's a lot of nodes in Dynamo. If you've ever gone in there and looked at them, and again, we're going to look at that shortly, there is a big long list of nodes. And what I hear from a lot of people is, how do you know which node to use? What combination of nodes should you use? So when you're just starting out, it can be really daunting. It's like going into the supermarket and you don't know what you're going to make. So you've got to, you think of, I want to make, this dish, this dish, but how do you get there? What are the ingredients you need? You really need a kind of a recipe to get you started. That way you can focus on, I need this specific ingredient, that specific ingredient, so on and so forth. So I like this cooking analogy because you are assembling something out of these base elements. In Dynamo, our base elements are our nodes. We're putting them together, we're grouping them, and we're going from there. Hopefully we're making something that makes people very full, satiated, all that thing. They're coming to you hungry, you're giving them a script, and then they're going away happy. So I like the notion. I like dinner parties too. So I kind of like that notion, and I think it fits. So the way that I came to this, and I'm going to kind of dive into a little bit stuff that I've gone through recently. So late last year, early this year, I did a course which was called Dynamo for Busy People. And during the course of developing this course, I created 40 or so scripts in a very short, focused period of time. Basically, I was getting up early, I was writing a script a day. And you do this consistently over a period of time, you have to get kind of organized. And let me pop down basically the output of each lesson in Dynamo for Busy People was this. It was an annotated script where I would basically, create a Dynamo script, go through, annotate it, describe, how this script was created, how you can use it. And again, I did this over the course of 40 or so days, doing all these various scripts. So like I said, what you do enough of these, you start to notice patterns, you start to develop your own kind of conventions. And so I had a color and a naming convention that I created, and I kept consistent through the course of creating all of these scripts. And by doing this, what I noticed was that there were consistent patterns. So I started seeing that similar groups of scripts, similar groups of nodes starting appearing in different scripts. And I would often cut and paste them between one script to the other. Also, since I was creating these annotations on them, I would copy the annotation from one group to the other. And that way, just in terms of a workflow, it made it a lot more efficient. So once I finished and, got all of the lessons done for Dynamo for busy people, I went back and I created an index of all of my groups. And when I talk about groups, and again, we're going to see this in a second in Dynamo itself, but what you can do if you haven't used Dynamo, you create your nodes, you connect them together, and then you can select a bunch of nodes, right click, and group them. And that's where you get this kind of color block. And I like to do it because it helps me think in terms of how I'm structuring my script. So you can see here, I'll zoom in a little bit more. I have a group that says get all sheets. I have a group that says get selected sheets by prefix, get legend view, add legend to sheets. So I use groups pretty religiously because I want to keep track of what nodes are doing what. And so I break it down in a pretty logical process rather than having all of these groups, no hierarchy, you don't really understand, what is where. So again, going through this Dynamo for Busy People course, I developed this system, and then from that system started to see these patterns, and then at the end went back to look at all of the groups that I had created in all of these scripts. So I created a Word file right here and essentially listed all the scripts and then all the groups in the scripts. And so I went through and looked at which groups popped up, over and over in the scripts. What are the most consistent groups? What are the most consistent tasks that a lot of these scripts share? And you can see again, some of them are kind of one-off, some of them are consistent from script to script. So this was an interesting exercise and got me thinking about this notion of, are there recipes that you can have more or less in Dynamo to perform tasks that are going to be consistent from a script, that's importing data from Excel versus one that is, creating walls from lines, or any of, these other thousands of scripts that you can create. So going through that, I found kind of the 7 most common, most fundamental groups of scripts that were present in almost all of these Dynamo scripts. So that is what we're going to talk about today. So all of that kind of as an introduction to get to these, what again I call these 7 essential recipes. And let's drill into this right here. And these recipes that we're going to look at today, and again, this isn't a comprehensive list of everything that you could do inside of Dynamo, but these are really the most fundamental things that you will do in a good 80% of your scripts. So you're going to be getting elements from the model. And let me zoom in a little bit here. In a lot of cases too, you're going to be getting all elements, and maybe you'll get all the elements by category. We can get them by type, we can get them by level, by active view. And again, I'm going to show you, we're going to hop right after this into Dynamo, and I'll walk you through how we do each of these recipes, if you will. We can also get selected elements. So we can select elements in the model. I can select a single element. I can select multiple elements. So, there's a lot of options that we have in terms of selecting elements inside of Dynamo. The other thing that we do a lot of is we get parameters. So if you're working on something, if you want to extract data, or if you want to use, filter by data, we're going to have to get that parameter data from the elements. And we can do that from the instance. So for example, if we have a door, we can get instance parameters from the door or from the doors, or we can get type data as well. So a lot of times we are going to be doing that, getting data And then the parallel to that is setting the data. So maybe we want to get data, put it out to Excel. We want to reformat that data, add some additional stuff in there, and then bring that data back into our Revit model, and then set it into the actual individual elements. And that's like a real, very common workflow that's real easy to do using Dynamo. Now, part of that as well, and part of that workflow is filtering a list. So Dynamo works in lists, meaning that once we get, say, all of the rooms in our model, Dynamo is going to give us a list of that rooms. And the way I think about it is it's kind of like a bucket. So I use my group of nodes to get all of the rooms. Dynamo is going to put them in, essentially in a bucket, and it just dumps them in the bucket. It will put them in the order in which they were created. So it's going to, doesn't matter what the room number is, doesn't matter, what level it is, whatever is created first is the first room or element to come out of that list. And that's consistent across the board. So we may want to filter that list. Maybe we want to get all of the rooms that are greater than 200 square meters. Maybe we want to get only the rooms that are on level 10, so on and so forth. So we're getting kind of a big collection in up here in our get elements from the model. Then we can filter those elements down here to get, the specific subset that we want. And so again, very, very common operation that we're going to do in Dynamo. And I'm going to show you like the recipe for doing that. We can also filter by category, which again, depending on the situation, might be useful to do. Now, like I said, the way that Dynamo is set up in Revit in general is that we're going to sort, everything's going to come out of the list in the order in which it was put in. So a lot of times what we want to do is we want to sort that list. So if we're getting all of our rooms, we may want to sort them by their level. We may want to sort them by the room number, so on. So that's another common operation we're going to do, is sorting a list. And then there are times too, going back to lists, that we want to create and format a list. And I grouped that in here with sort a list because I didn't have a better place to put it. But I'll walk you through that process, where if we want to combine some individual elements into a list and format that way. And again, that's common where if you're extracting parameter data from Revit, and then we want to put it out into Excel. So we'll have to basically create that Excel data in Dynamo. And I'll show you that. It's actually very straightforward. So speaking of that, our last two kind of essential recipes here are going to be reading data. And we can read data from Excel, or we can read data from a CSV file. Excel, I will say, and again, doing through the course of this Dynamo for Busy People course, some of the scripts relied on Excel. And I did see that there were instances where people had issues with Excel. So Dynamo also works with CSV files, so comma delimited files. It works with them just as well. Either reading data, same thing goes with writing data. So these are our essential recipes. And again, we're going to walk through them kind of node by node. So the intent, my intent anyways, by the end of this our hour together, is that if you don't have experience with Dynamo, hopefully this will give you some confidence. It'll give you a good starting point where you can start to play with it a little bit more. And then if you do have some experience, I'm going to give you this Dynamo file as well. It's a good place where you can quickly assemble scripts, because I've grouped these nodes, into these kind of recipes. So you have a good place from which to start. So that's the goal from today.